Feeling out of control is scary. And the feeling to need to take it back usually comes from a place of like past trauma. Like maybe you've already had something happen. It could come from your own insecurities. I don't know if I can weather this storm. I don't know if I can do this.
Welcome to This Way Up, the podcast dedicated to supporting parents and caregivers navigating the complex world of mental health. I'm Andrea, and each episode we dive deep into the conversations that matter, exploring the challenges, triumphs, and transformative journeys of those facing mental health struggles within their families. Whether you're here for expert advice, inspiring stories, or just a little boost to get you through the day, we've got you covered. So grab a cup of coffee, kick back, and join us as we find the bright spots in the mental health journey, because we're all climbing our way up together.
Let's be honest. Most of us like to think we're pretty chill and go with the flow until something doesn't go our way. Then suddenly we are micromanaging, we're over-explaining, or trying to plan ahead, all in the name of feeling safe and easing that anxiety. Well, today we are going to dive into that very human need for control, why we do it, how it shows up in our relationships, and what it's really trying to protect. Today, I have invited Kati Morton to be with us, who I am just so thrilled she is here. I have followed her on YouTube for a few years now, and her work is amazing. She is a licensed therapist, best-selling author, and mental health educator with a global community of over 1.5 million subscribers. Her work helps people understand their emotions, break unhealthy patterns, and really build resilience. Her upcoming book, which is called Why Do I Keep Doing This? And is out December 9th of 2025, talks about this notion of control and explores how we can really break free from self-sabotage. So together, we unpack sneaky ways that control shows up, not just in parenting and caregiving, but really in all of the connections that we have with the people that matter most. So if you like this episode, please share it with your friends and family, and like and subscribe to the podcast. Welcome, Kati. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
I am excited to be here too. And today we are going to talk about control, which I think almost every human on the planet has some measure of control, but it's when it gets unhealthy, either for ourselves or for the relationship or for both.
Yes.
So I'd like to kind of start with you explaining what control is and how we might see it.
The truth about control is that it's an illusion. And it's a precarious relationship that I feel like all of us kind of have with control, because you think like, oh, I have my house under control, or I have my job under control, or I have whatever, my kids under control. That sounds kind of good in some ways. You're like, oh, you got it all together. You're keeping it together. But then if you're like, oh, I have a really controlling boyfriend, or, oh, my friend is really controlling, then it turns into a bad thing, right? And so it's a very precarious relationship that we have with control. But overall, it's really just important as we talk about it to remember that it's an illusion, because the only thing that we truly have control over is ourselves. Nothing outside of ourselves do we have any control over. We can try to manipulate, we can try to encourage, we can try to act in certain ways to be passive aggressive, hope to get a certain response, all trying to take back that, quote unquote control that we never had, if that makes sense.
Oh my gosh. I don't think I've ever put it into that perspective. I have seen that control can mask itself, right? But to say it's an illusion, and then to say could be manipulation or encouragement, is a nice way. Well, I guess manipulation's not, but a nice way of saying that's the way it comes out.
Yeah. Because we don't know how else to quote unquote take the control back, right? We can feel like, let's say my husband is doing the dishes and putting away the way I don't like. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I could say, hey, I really prefer it to be put away this way. I could communicate clearly. Mm-hmm. And that's a request. I put in a request. He can either honor the request, or he can say, you know what, I'm doing the dishes, get over it. So, or I could manipulate. We use like it isn't a good thing, but it's way more common than we think. I could try to manipulate going like, well, if you did, and I like don't give full sentences. I kind of act passive aggressive.
Mhm.
Why are the dishes over here? What's happening? Instead of clearly stating, hoping that then I'm controlling behavior, right? So it is this it's a very sneaky thing. And we all, I'm including myself in this.
Sure.
I do it too.
Yeah.
We all do it. This is not a space for judgment. This is more a space for understanding the why.
So, how do we recognize it in ourselves? I think it's easier to recognize it in somebody else, but I do want to talk about that. But how do we recognize it in ourselves that this is a controlling behavior or that we're feeling a need for that control?
There's a couple of things. It's tricky. That's a great question because it's very tricky. The first is to recognize, look back on a tough situation, something that was stressful. Okay. And look back and think about the behaviors that you had. I'll give an example. Let's say that financially incredibly stressful. Okay. And you don't have any control over it. Let's say you're waiting for, I don't know, like a check to clear, or you know that this thing is coming in, but it's just not. And how do you act in that time? What do you do when the quote unquote control you thought you had is taken away? When your child is acting out and you can't do anything about it? When the person you love is, struggling with mental illness and not taking care of themselves, maybe they struggle with addiction. Think back to those times because that will tell you your behavior. Now, the behaviors are things like people pleasing. Do you say yes when you mean no? Perfectionism. Do you try to keep everything else just so? Do you find yourself numbing out with other things? Do you overspend? Do you overeat? Do you undereat? Do you use drugs or alcohol? Like, what are the kind of coping that's coming out? And I know this is like, I wish there was a direct answer. Like, this is how you know,
No,
but
yeah.
everybody's so different. You have to look back at a time when you didn't have control and how it manifested itself for you. Now, in my new book, Why Do I Keep Doing This? It's essentially, I'm taking you through my journey of discovering this, and the ones I name, like perfectionism, people pleasing, those are my behaviors. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And when I feel particularly out of control, I will even like buy random things on Amazon.
Oh, wait, it feels so good to buy random things
It
on
gives
Amazon.
you a dopamine hit. It
It
actually does. I
does.
actually did research and it does. It 100% does. And so it's just being curious, not judgmental about your process and what you do. You might even find yourself getting really irritable or being really short tempered with people. Like, how does it affect you and how do you deal with it? And again, control's an illusion, and we can talk about like the letting go of it. That's the hardest part. I'm still learning.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard, but just start to be curious about your behaviors because that's how you'll notice how it's showing up for you. The people pleasing and the perfectionism is really it for me, but I've had tons of patients who do more of the like numbing out behaviors or even scrolling on your phone. There's a ton of ways, as weird as it sounds, that this control or lack of control can show up.
So you're really trying to calm some sort of anxiety within yourselves.
Yes, because things feeling out of control is scary. And
Mm-hmm.
the feeling to need to take it back usually comes from a place of like past trauma. Like maybe you've already had something happen. It could come from your own insecurities. I don't know if I can weather this storm. I don't know if I can do this. Maybe they don't love me anymore. There can be a lot of reasons that we try to control other people or control situations. And it always, it has more to do with us if we're the one trying to do the controlling. It has more to do with us and our own past experiences than it really does with the situation or the person.
So I want to get to the other person, but let's focus on ourselves. When we're doing that and we are now recognizing, oh gosh, this may be myself trying to control a situation. What are some things, and we're not in a therapy session right now, I get that. What are some things that we can do before therapy to help us recognize it and to stop it, or at least put a pause in it?
Yeah, no, a great question. I think for me, what worked the best, again, is being curious about it and understanding what it is that's triggering you. I know we use the word triggering a lot, but really it just means that you're like dysregulated. It's
Mhm.
upsetting you. You're feeling agitated. You're worrying at night. You don't feel calm. And so we have to kind of try to identify what it is. And based on what we think it is, don't have to be 100% certain. You can be like, I have a lot of stuff going on. It could be this, it could be this, it could be this. It's probably all of them. Okay. Then I need to do something to calm my nervous system down. And that's just really a fancy way of saying you need to find some inner peace. And the ways that you can do it, there's a ton of them. I'm going to rattle some off because everybody's different. My favorite go-to is a shower. I know that sounds weird, but the other day it was a super stressful day, just like 3 days ago. I'm like, what day is it? Just a few days ago. And I was like, I felt the urge to like pick a fight with my husband, and I was just feeling agitated. And like, I got an email that this wasn't going to work out. And I was like, oh, I was just frustrated, bummed, annoyed. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go take a shower. And it's like a reset for some people. For me, it happens to work. Another is a body shake, which sounds kind of weird, but when your
Like a
body,
dog.
yes, like a dog out of the bath. And that's why they shake all the time, by the way. If you watch them like wrestle with you or play with another dog or animal, they'll often shake afterwards. And it's a way of getting all that queued up energy that you can get when you're pushed into fight or flight, which is known as
Mhm.
your stress response. So if you're stressed out, chances are you're in it. It gives that energy a place for it to go versus it coursing through our system, making our
Hmm.
heart race, making our breath be short, making us feel like those tingles sometimes. We just
Yeah.
feel flustered. It gives it a way out. So a body shake, yes, you'll be out of breath. No, that doesn't mean you're out of shape. It's just normal. It's just weird to shake your whole body at the same time. I always tell people because they're like, it's really hard. I'm like, it actually is. But give it like a good 15 seconds, which doesn't sound like a long time, but it really is.
Oh, anybody
Another,
who's held a plank for 15 seconds knows that it's hard.
that's a long 15 seconds, right? Longest 15 seconds of your life. And then another fave that I have is temperature change. So it's still pretty warm in most places, but we're getting into winter, so it'll be cooling down. Put a cold rag on your face, your neck, even on your, like your wrists or the temples to just cool your system down. Having a temperature change can really, really like pull you out of this chaos feeling and the feeling like, oh, I need to do all this, or the kind of panicked feeling that the
Yeah.
lack of control can give us.
Well, I remember when my daughter was like 10 and she was having panic attacks. That was what her therapist had said. She's like, I remember calling her once because I was like, I can't get her out of it. What goes on? She said, go get an ice cube, put it on her head. And it helped. And so from that time forward, it was like, okay, we always had like a cold rag in the refrigerator ready just in case she, needed some help with that. So
Yeah, I love that. And people who travel a lot or in their car, you can get like the little first aid break ice pack things,
oh,
and you
that's
can
a great
keep those
idea.
on too, just so you can have them available all the time if that happens to work best for you.
So, what are the implications of being controlling when to your relationships?
There's a couple of things. The first is that when we're so focused on controlling, we're not actually being ourselves. And so we're going to miss out on true connection and true intimacy. And that's a big one. And I know a lot of people might be like, well, it doesn't feel so bad all the time. Probably because you're used to not being that connected. And so it keeps you
Mm,
kind of safe. So it's owning up to that. But then the real kicker, and what I would say is like a relationship killer, is that in that urge to control, we also don't let the other person be themselves. And so
mm,
that will push them away. And that's honestly the biggest fear and I guess frustration for a lot of my patients who have what we call like an anxious attachment, meaning they're so worried someone's going to leave. They like cling on so tight. And it's almost like, I don't know if you remember these things, but we called them water weenies. It's a terrible name, but it was those, you'd squeeze
yeah.
them as a kid and they'd roll out, right? As like a water filled, I don't know,
Yes.
like tube balloon. I don't even know
They
how to
were so
explain it.
fun.
So fun. And you would do this and you'd squeeze one on top of the other and
Yeah.
it'd shoot through. That's essentially what we do when we try to control. We essentially push people away. We shoot them out like a water weenie. We can't keep a hold of them because they can't be themselves and there's no freedom in the relationship. And a true healthy relationship thrives on my ability to be myself and be seen as myself,
Mhm.
and your ability to be yourself and you be seen as yourself. And both of those things to be respected and loved and supported. And when we try to control, we take all of that away. And it can even strangle the joy in a relationship because it can
Mhm.
feel like it has to be just a certain way when life is never, it's never going to turn out exactly as we planned.
I know. And that's,
Unfortunately.
well, I know, but it's also fortunate, right? I mean, sometimes
Mhm.
like, it's like, okay, this isn't the way I saw life, but it's not bad. It's
And
pretty
we
good.
sometimes couldn't even have imagined it being as good as it was, right?
Right?
Like we were so myopic in our view of things that it's like we didn't even have the ability to see how cool it could be or how amazing this adventure could have gotten. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's the irony of control is again that we don't really have it, and it will end up causing the one thing we don't want to happen. That's like with
Yeah.
my anxiously attached patients, their biggest fear is that someone would leave them, but then
Yeah.
in their effort to keep them,
Mm.
they push them away.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so tricky, and we all have that urge sometimes. If you I mean, it's a very normal experience. I think of like my teen years, and like, when you're going out, you're not really
Yeah.
going anywhere, but you're going out,
Yeah.
and you would say if someone tried to pull away or they weren't as available, your reaction is to call more. At least
Yes.
I couldn't text back then because that's my age. We didn't have that ability. You would call more and you would want to do more, and you push
Yeah.
away.
And the other person would be so annoyed because they're like, give
Mhm.
me some space. You know,
Exactly.
interestingly enough, I've been married for many, many years, because I'm many, many years old. But, um, and time always gives us a gift, right? And I've seen kind of the progression and the growth of my own marriage. And one of the things that we needed to learn as a couple was that he needed that time and space when we were in an argument. And I needed validation that he wasn't going to just leave the relationship, right? Or
Mhm.
just, it was going to be unresolved. It took us a long time to get there, but now we're able, to say, he'll say, I'm just upset. I just need a few minutes. And I'm able to comfortably go, okay. And I don't think I would have ever said that me trying to resolve the conflict was controlling. But now that after this conversation, it absolutely was, because I was trying to control the environment that we were in to make myself feel better and to know that life was going to be okay and that he wasn't going to leave. And if I could control it and make it better, then I had succeeded.
Yes, because you assuaged your anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Because you feel calmer. No, and it's conflict is very tricky, and it's definitely a space where control jumps in. And it's so funny you say that because, like, I am your husband, and you are like my husband. Like the
Hmm.
roles, it's the same situation, switched roles.
Right.
And I think it's very common for people to get into relationships and get married to people who are to have a different way of coping, right? Because if I have dated guys that are just like me, and that means because I need space, so I'll pull away. We essentially just like ghost each other and it just ends. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So you actually kind of need the like
Yeah.
the chaser. You need the person who wants to reconnect,
Right.
and that's why it works. So that's like the irony of it. But you're right. It takes time, and I think the big piece when it comes to relinquishing this idea of control in our relationships, it comes with a level of vulnerability, and
Yeah.
that's what stops us because, especially when I was younger, to like pull away and take that time and then decide to come back to repair I'm opening myself up to potential hurt, right? I'm opening up to
Hmm.
the fact that maybe they won't be there. Maybe
Hmm.
they're already mad and they're like, oh, I thought this was over or whatever,
Hmm.
And so when we work to repair, when we work to stop controlling, when we work to lean in instead of pull back or whatever, we're really opening ourselves up to the potential of the pain. And I think that's what, keeps us in those behaviors. Like in your case, because of the anxiety that you might be abandoned, that he might cut and run, you were assuaging that by getting closer. But to
Right.
not do that chase would mean that maybe I'm opening myself up to the fact that that could happen,
Hmm.
and then the wonderful thing about therapy and challenging yourself to act differently is that as we do those things, as you don't chase and he doesn't leave, magic, we
Right.
slowly are proving to our nervous system, hey, it's actually not that scary.
Right.
History tells me he's going to stay.
Yeah.
And he'll be there, and it sounds so simple, but it's really hard emotionally and nervous in our nervous system to sit with it.
Right. And I think as a parent, different example, when my kids were going through their struggles,
Mm-hmm.
the harder I tried to fix them, I felt like we weren't moving forward. It was when I let them kind of manage what they were going through that I was and relinquishing that control, that I was then allowing them to grow. And whereas when I was on top of them with everything, it just was, it wasn't working. We were not moving forward on whatever the issue was.
Yeah. And I do find, I'm glad you brought that type of relationship up, because I do find it's the hardest for parents to
Yeah.
let go of quote unquote control, because essentially when you have a baby, you have control for a long period of time, essentially because they need you for a
Right.
lot of things. And then this horrible yet beautiful part of our development called teenage years is really when we as teens push back to assert our independence, to figure out who we are, to learn how to make decisions on our own, do all those things, right? But as a parent, it's like someone pulling the control away, like without
Right.
you, and it's very uncomfortable. And you're right that like if we try to stay on top of them, we call that like helicopter parenting. People talk about it like that, but I think it's just honestly an adjustment period. I think it's very normal for parents to try to swoop in, but if we don't allow for that independence, for mistakes to be made, for them to push away a little bit and try things on their own, we will slow down their progress, will slow down their belief in themselves and their confidence, which isn't what we want to do. But we just don't realize that we're doing it because we're just trying to keep them safe. But then they don't feel like, then the interpreted belief they can have is like, I don't know if I can solve problems on my own.
Yeah.
And that can be even scarier long term.
Mm-hmm. I remember my mother-in-law, she was one class away from getting her doctorate in child psychology. And then she had my husband. It all stopped. But I remember my son was 2 days old, 2 days old. His head's all flopping all over the place.
Yeah.
And she says to me, she says, okay, well, now your job is to let him go and to be independent. And I'm like, she does not mean this literally, but that was what she was meaning. She was meaning from this point on, I needed to teach him how not to need me. And
Isn't
as a
that
parent,
painful? Yeah.
it's so hard.
I can't believe she said that so early on.
Yeah, she was a little direct, but you knew where it was, I knew where it was coming from. But she was like, this is what, we need to work on. I was like, my God, all these hormones are going through me. I do not want.
You're like, that's the last thing I want to hear.
Right.
But she's right though. Like you birth a child and it's almost like they slowly move away from you, and at first it's a slower process and we don't realize.
Right.
But it starts to reveal itself when they like want to dress themselves. Like I remember my mom telling me I was super stubborn from an early age, still am. And I was like, I want to wear this. And she'd be like, that doesn't matter. Okay, wear whatever you want. Look like a lunatic, Yep. So you start to feel that from your kids where there's a little pushback. No, they start learning no. Yeah. And so it is a slow, like letting them out, letting the rope out. And so they don't need you. Yeah. Oof. Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough. Mm-hmm. So, okay. How do you detect control from a partner or another person, another relationship, especially when it's become so normalized in your life? That's what I think happens is we normalize, oh, well, okay. And then you don't realize that a behavior is actually controlling.
Yes, agreed. And it's a slow warm. It's almost like a frog in a pot. They slowly heat it up, right? People don't usually come in and try to control you right away. You'd run away. You'd be like, that person's crazy or toxic or whatever you'd have to say. There are a couple of things. It depends on what the control is about, because people can try to control who we spend our time with. They can try to control our money. They can try to control what we do for a living, how often we see our friends and family. There's a ton of different ways, right, that people can manipulate and try to control us. I want you to consider, like, take a beat, and I want you to consider if you feel okay doing something on your own. And I say that as like, well, obviously I do. No, think about it. Like if I was like, hey, this weekend, I want you just to go to lunch by yourself. How would that go down? would that be okay? And how would you feel about it? That's a good check-in, because if someone's trying to control your time or your money, you're going to best believe they have something to say about that, and they're not going to want you to do that. I also want you to consider, it helps when we're in a relationship to look back before, and do we still get to engage with our family and friends in the same way? It's normal for things to shift if you've had children or they've had children, or, life stuff.
Right.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the quote unquote permission to do that. And if you said, I really need to see my girlfriend or my sister or my brother, they're going through a tough time, would the person you're in a relationship with be like, okay, that of course? Or would you even feel like you need to ask permission? Those are all good check-ins. Like, do you need permission? Can you make decisions on your own that aren't big decisions? I'm not talking like I'm going to buy a car or a house or go on
Right.
vacation. Like, these are just little life things. How free do you feel to be yourself? And I also want you to notice if you feel free to be yourself and speak up for yourself with your partner. Because those are really the spaces where when I said that, if you had a visceral reaction, that kind of tells you what you need to know. And it doesn't mean that it's broken, that it can't be fixed. It doesn't mean that your partner is abusive and terrible. They could be, but this is just a check-in because they might be trying, again, to make sure they don't lose you. And it might be done out of love, but it can really be harmful. And so, it's good to identify and then get into couples counseling, to be honest, is the best next step.
So how about so a lot of our listeners are parents of children who struggle with their mental health, and they obviously are struggling with a lot of anxiety and such. How do you, as a parent, manage some of those behaviors and realize that the child is, being empathetic with the child, that they're struggling and they're developing and this, that, and the other, but at the same time, not encourage that behavior, and also recognize that that is a behavior that they're doing to manipulate the situation because they're scared?
Yeah, I think the best thing we can do as parents is, and I'm going to say it this way, but then I'll explain, is to call it out. And I don't mean to call it out in like you're doing this thing. We're not judging. We, again, come from curiosity. So you'd be like, I find it really interesting that you came to me like this when I think what you're wanting to do is this.
Mm-hmm.
You're asking me this way, but is what you really want is for me to give you permission to do X, Y, Z. Like, just acknowledge it. And then I think there's space, if they'll tolerate it, depends on the child, depends on their age. Then there's space to say, you can just say it to me. You don't need to do it this way. Or you can say, going about it that way means that I might not understand what you really need. It might be easier if you just told me, or you asked for what you needed, or you said what you meant. And I think there's room for conversations like that. And then there's also the piece that as a parent, the best thing we can do is to model the behavior. So if we're wanting them to communicate clearly and to be honest, we have to do that too. And I know it's hard, and I know parents can feel like, oh, I need to hold myself up to this like higher standard. I'm the adult, I'm the parent. That doesn't mean you're not human. And I'm not saying that your child becomes your therapist. That's not what this is, but it's more like, I just had a really rough day. I'm feeling really down. I don't have anything left to give. Can we talk about this tomorrow? Like, you're being honest. You're not just like yelling. And we're also not trying to control. We're just saying, hey, this is where I'm at, and this is what I need from you, in as clear a way as possible. Now, obviously, if our child is having a tough time, that might, it depends on the situation and how much they can tolerate. But at the end of the day, you're still modeling healthy behavior. You're communicating clearly, being honest about where you're at and what you need. And that's what we're hoping to get from them, because people manipulate in general when they either don't know another way of asking for what they want, or they're afraid if they ask, they won't get it. And so we have to just open up conversations about that and let them tell you, like, how come you didn't ask me directly? You could ask me about this. Well, I thought you'd say no. If we catch them in a lie or catch them manipulating, just be curious. Don't have to be judgmental. What made you do that? Why didn't you think you could tell me? And listen.
So that sounds like great advice even for a couple.
It is, yes. It kind of applies across the board, because when we come from curiosity and we try to understand their perspective, then we can actually make things better. It's like listening to learn versus listening to fix or listening to win. You have to be able to hear why, because there's always a reason, even if it seems so nonsensical or irrational. You're like, why are you doing it this way? Why did you have to make this into a big deal? But in their head, they didn't think there was another way.
It's interesting. I was having a conversation with a girlfriend yesterday who was having some uncomfortable feelings about another girlfriend. And it was like almost like a love triangle of women, which I thought went away in high school, but it doesn't. It still stays.
Doesn't. Mm-hmm.
But one of the things we were talking about was her expressing her feelings to her girlfriend and being open about it and how scary that was. And it just doesn't matter what relationship you're in. There is this vulnerability, and her way, I think, if I'm going to take this back, of controlling it was not even to confront it. Is that a different way to control things? Is just to walk away and just not confront something?
Yes, it's part of us, again, trying to calm our own anxieties, right? It's kind of that like fear of conflict / people pleasing type of thing where, oh, I don't want to be vulnerable. This feels very unsafe for me, makes me super anxious. So instead of addressing it, I'm proving to my system it's not safe by running away. I'm going to ghost. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to pretend it's okay, even though it's not. And it's like our own way of like trying to sidestep the real problem, trying to feel okay in a bad situation. It's perpetuating old patterns. Usually I grew up in a family that didn't fight at all, which you'd be like, oh, that's amazing. No, I don't. Like, I thought a fight was like, this relationship is over. Like friendship, dating didn't matter. And she might've grown up in a similar situation. And so you have to learn how to have conflict.
Yeah. You know, I keep coming back to personal stories, but I just think about these things. So my husband's family is very, 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 very vocal. I mean, they're from the East Coast. They just say things like they are, you know, I mean, they're from Massachusetts. We call them massholes. You know, I mean, it's just a whole different story. We're West Coast people. We did not. I will never forget, like the first Thanksgiving, I went over to their house and they started talking about something. I thought, oh my God, this whole family is disintegrating today. I'm never going to see them again. They're gone. And here we are 27 years later, they still love one another, but they just have such a different way to manage things. And I think that was a huge adjustment for us in our marriage over the years, was how we handle those conflicts. And it was just, anyways.
No, it's like recreational arguing. Some families don't do that. And it's like their tolerance for what we, as you know, more waspy types, I guess, like what they would say is like just regular conversation. We're like, that's a full-on fight.
Yes.
Which might explain why your husband wants time, because he's like, I don't need to keep fighting.
Yeah.
I've done that.
Enough.
Yep. I've been fought at my whole life. So it's gonna pull away.
Now it's turned into, we just grab the popcorn whenever they get together, because we're like, oh, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be good.
And it's interesting, right? Because we have a couple that we were really good friends with, and we would go over for Thanksgiving and they would just fight with each other. And I remember the first year, because my husband and I are not that type. Yeah. And the first year we left and he's like, do you think they're going to get divorced? They seem really unhappy. And I was like, I know. Oh my God. And then we went over for dinner, like, let's say a couple of months later. And I was like, I think they're just like that. I think that's how they communicate. And I had a good friend growing up. Her family was like that too. And I'm like, I think that's how they talk.
Yeah.
And they're still together 3 kids later, happy as clams. It's all fine. But it's funny when it's not your style. You're not used to that.
Yeah. Anyways.
Funny.
Well, Katie, you have a book coming out. I would love to hear about it and when it comes out.
Yes. My book, Why Do I Keep Doing This? Isn't she pretty? I'm excited. She's coming out December 9th. It's essentially what we were talking about. It's unlearning the habits that are keeping you stuck and unhappy. And what I focus on is control. The thread of control runs through the whole book. And it's a totally different book from what I've written before in my other two. It's not as prescriptive, like, here's what we've learned in research. Here's what I know. Here's how you can fix it. It's more like, come along with me as I discover why I keep doing this.
Well, I love that you're taking it from your own perspective. You had mentioned that earlier today. And I think it's yes, prescriptive is good, but when you can really say, hey, I've lived this and this is from my perspective, what I've learned is very relatable. Very, very relatable.
That's my hope, because I feel personally when I read books, I learn more through stories with people and what's going on versus someone telling me. That feels like I'm in school and it's hard to like digest it all, right? And so my hope for this is that people can kind of come along with me, and I share my stories. I also share some wonderful stories my community offered.
Mm-hmm.
And through one or the other, hopefully you can kind of see some of yourself and learn along with me. And there's still stuff I'm learning. Like some of the chapters, I'm like, I don't know. This is as far as I got. I feel better, but we're still working on it, because I feel like we're all works in progress. And to think that that's just can stop one day is not realistic.
Yeah. Well, Kati, thank you so much. I appreciate your time this morning. You can find Kati all over YouTube and TikTok,
Instagram, all social media. It's just Kati Morton like the salt.
All right. Easy enough to remember. Okay, Kati, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to This Way Up. I hope you're feeling a little lighter, a little brighter, and ready to take on whatever comes next. Remember, the journey of mental health is all about progress, not perfection. So keep climbing. And don't forget to celebrate the small wins. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could use a little lift.